Hello everyone and welcome to Techweek TV, brought to you by Callaghan Innovation, and thanks for tuning in to our last session of the day. Very excited to be talking about innovation from the edge with my great friend David Downs.
Thank you.
Who is the General Manager at NZTE, along with a stand-up comedian. Reformed.
Ex-stand-up comedian. Yes.
And a whole bunch of other things that we'll learn about today. Hi David.
I'm very good, thank you, but I'm looking at that TV, it looks like we've got some sort of forced perspective. It's like I'm Gandalf. I'm going to go back a little bit.
That also has a delay.
Smaller. How's that? Oh no, it doesn't work. No, it's just not working at all. Sorry.
You see, I put him on the spot by telling him he had to do stand-up comedy, so yeah. I think that was his attempt of, without actually standing up.
Comedy, look, I'd be off the top of the screen. See, it's not going to work at all. The whole thing's fatally flawed, Sian.
Okay, so...
It's all right, on topic now. Techweek.
Well, how do you know me?
Well, so first of all, we do a lot of work. I work at NZTE, and we do a lot of work with the Kiwi landing pad. And through the Kiwi landing pad, I got to know you as first of all kind of community manager in the San Francisco area, and now latterly more as the, I don't know what you are. What's your job title? The Uber does it all person for Kiwi landing pad, makes John Holt look good person. That's that person.
We'll splice that and send him a clip later.
Good.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, how long you've been there, what you guys focus on.
Sure. So New Zealand Trade and Enterprise is a government agency. So we are a bit like Callaghan Innovations. In fact, we consider ourselves like the sister organisations together. Callaghan looks at commercialisation of innovation in New Zealand and acceleration of innovation, and we look at taking companies to market and bringing companies to the international markets. So that's kind of our focus. I've been there for 7 years, which is quite strange, because when I joined, I said, I'm going to come to government, because I spent most of my life in the private sector. So I come into government, but only for a couple of years, because I don't want to get institutionalised. And now, 7 years later, I'm sort of still there, because I quite enjoy it.
Have you been institutionalised?
I don't know. I'm struggling to... I wear like a suit, bits of a suit, but then I'm wearing a T-shirt, so I think I've got away. And I never wear a tie if I can avoid it.
And I noticed you're wearing Allbirds.
I
am.
am.
About that.
My favourite New Zealand shoe brand, Allbirds, there we go. I love what they represent, actually. They represent everything about New Zealand innovation, which I think is clever. So first of all, can I talk about them?
Yes.
Good. So first of all, it's because you asked me the question. First of all, what I love about them is that they're of New Zealand, like they kind of come from the land. They're like this amazing wool, started with merino wool. And so they've kind of come from New Zealand, which is quite unique. But then they've added this amazing design and technology, and they've added kind of innovation. They've thought about it differently. So Tim, who set up Allbirds, basically. Oh, you're getting a close up. There you go. That one needs a bit of a clean, actually.
Stop watching that.
There we go. Yeah, good. And so I just love about it. And then not only that, but then they've done an extremely good job of taking these things to market. So, they've broken into the US market. They have retail stores. They have a lot of kind of brand presence. You would know in the Silicon Valley area, they're like the default shoe for your average tech entrepreneur and investor. So, I just think that they're quintessentially New Zealand.
Let's talk a little bit about that story, because we both know that Kiwi companies don't necessarily tell the best story, and we're very humble. Yeah. So I guess what Tim and the Allbirds team did is they chose one word and they just went for it. It was very simple. Can you talk a little bit about storytelling and the art for Kiwi companies? Yes,
and you and I have both seen this, that the wonderful thing about New Zealand is that we are a sort of a humble and self-effacing and quiet lot. The worst thing about New Zealanders internationally is that we're a humble and self-effacing and quiet lot. And so that which can be our greatest strength is also a weakness for us. So we definitely, in New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, NZTE, we see companies who are going to market and trying to behave as if that international market is New Zealand, where it's a virtue to sort of talk down a bit. It's a virtue to sort of be very shy and not boast. And in many markets around the world, that's the wrong thing to do. And one of the main things we try and teach companies is don't assume that it's like New Zealand. You've got to take a different approach. So you go to the Silicon Valley area or to the Bay Area, and actually just by way of illustration, a story that you were involved in but you won't remember. A few years ago, you were hosting an event at the Kiwi landing pad, and you had it was up on the roof. When you had that rooftop thing, and you brought in a whole lot of investors, like sort of people from the community, and we had about 20 Kiwi tech entrepreneurs from relatively small but young businesses. And our job, you and I were hosting it, was to get these groups to talk to each other, get the entrepreneurs to sort of pitch up to the investors. And we're hoping that magic would happen, as often does. And I remember there was one particular company, and I grabbed the guy. He was standing over by himself, just sort of in the corner quietly, shyly. And I said, come over here, we're going to introduce you to this guy. I don't even know this guy, but he's got the little special investor tag. And I brought him over, and I knew what what the company did. So I was saying to this investor, you wait till you hear about this company. This is a really incredible company. You're going to enjoy hearing from this company. And then I said, tell him. And the guy went, oh, yeah, we're all right. I mean, we're nothing special. And I was like, oh my God, because that's such a Kiwi thing. And he was just being humble and lovely, but he just hadn't kind of clicked in that actually this is not the culture where you be humble and understated.
And what happened?
We had to teach, well, after that, we sort of started teaching these organisations that have a little bit more chutzpah, a little bit more, we say bring the haka, so the All Blacks, when they go on the field, they start with a haka. They're still amazing Kiwis, but they start with this kind of very confident self. So a lot of companies, we have to basically teach that when you go to those international markets, you have to bring that full confidence level to your A game.
Yes, I agree. On that note, can you tell us about how your stand-up comedy days have helped you?
Switching topics.
Hold on.
Okay.
It's related.
Okay, good. I'll
have
see
helped
how you join the dots here.
throughout your career.
Ah, okay.
See what I did there?
Yeah, sort of. It's a clumsy segue.
Just call me out.
It's good. I know. Well, so just to set a bit of a context. So I started my career. When I say career, I dropped out of university is another way of saying the same thing. As an actor and a stand-up comedian, and I did that for about 6 or 7 years, somewhat successfully, but not really, I suppose. But it was good fun in my 20s. And then decided I would go into the business world. And, in fact, what happened was Catherine, my wife, and I got married and decided we were going to have children. And we both were working in TV and film and stuff like that. And it was just like crazy. So one of us had to get a proper job, and that was me. So I went and actually started up some IT companies. And then I went into the corporate world, and as I say now, into the government world. I guess the interesting thing through that whole thread there, and it's so amazing now in this modern world when you think about artificial intelligence and, Industry 4.0 and kind of the change that's happening, is that creativity is this precious element, which nowadays people are really quite happy to talk about. But there was a period there in the business world where creativity or being a bit unusual or whatever was seen as a bit
Or having an arts degree was like
having
the
an
worst
arts degree,
yeah,
exactly. And have you got an arts degree?
No.
Oh, really? What have you got? Have you got a degree
Business
in anything?
degree.
Oh, you see?
Yeah, boring.
See, nowadays, there was a period there where business degree, everyone would go, yeah, business degree. Nowadays, you'd say, actually, we need the people who've got the arts degrees and the design degrees and have done all sorts of weird things.
Creative thinking.
Yeah. Yep. So that was it for me. It's like the whole thread through my career has always been about creativity. And even in the business world, I think it's quite creative. And nowadays, it's very much so. So
awesome.
there you go.
Okay, so this is meant to be about innovation from the edge. So now that we've set the context of all the things, what does that mean to you?
Oh, cool. That's a big question. Innovation from the edge. First of all, it's a nice little phrase. It's a lovely little phrase about New Zealand. I use that phrase quite a bit about innovation happens at the edge or at the intersection. It doesn't happen in the core heart of things. My favourite story is that the chicken McNugget was invented in a sort of this maverick branch of McDonald's where they actually tried to shut the guy down because it was this crazy idea that he was making McNuggets. But he was right on the outer fringes of the organisation, and of course, over time, it sort of becomes accepted. It's like that in many organisations. Innovation's very hard to do in the kind of the business as usual big part of the corporation. It can only happen at the edge. Similarly, on a global scale, when you come from a country like New Zealand, you have this perspective of the world that's different. New Zealanders think differently. Definitely, we look at problems in a different way. We're not worried about things like the distance, the travel, all that sort of thing, and that allows us to kind of have a different approach. So, innovation from the edge means that to me. It also, I think, it sums up a lot about the New Zealand story. We do a lot of work at NZT about thinking what is New Zealand's story to the world, and that idea that we can bring our different way of thinking to other people and kind of add things is amazing. Not just in the technology world, it's there as well, but in the arts world, etc. I mean, you look at things like the work that Weta Workshops and Sir Peter Jackson have done, etc. They started with a very innovative approach and they brought that innovation from the edge into the core, and now, you know, that's how it's done now. So
And we're so known for it now.
yeah, and it's a great attribute to have, is that we can have that kind of slightly different perspective than the rest of the world.
So on that note, you like to joke about being a genetically modified organism.
No joke, my friend.
And exactly. So
If you could turn off the lights, I'd glow, but we probably can't.
can we talk a little bit about that and your journey, if you don't mind sharing it, and I guess the technology that you now are?
Cool, yeah. So that's it. I mean, first of all, I would have to say I'm a very passionate technologist. You know, so I love technology, I love innovation. It's always been part of kind of my passion, and wrote books about it and all that sort of stuff. Little did I know that that was going to become kind of a really important thing for me. So a couple of years ago, I had cancer. I contracted lymphoma, which is a blood cancer, and I went through all of the treatments here in New Zealand and basically ran out of treatment options. And you know, it's a long, convoluted story, which, if you're interested, you know, you can hear sometime, or you can read about it in my new book coming out soon. Actually, let me do that again with a bit of an advertisement. My new book. Hang on, here we go. Close up on camera 3. My book coming out soon. A Mild Touch of the Cancer. All good bookstores. Anyway, sorry, blatant push.
Hijack.
So basically, I ran out of options in New Zealand. I had to find an option elsewhere in the world, and through the amazing set of coincidences and luck and hard work and friendship and all sorts of things, I got myself onto a clinical trial for a whole new treatment for cancer, which was in Boston at Harvard University, one of the medical institutes at Harvard. And this particular treatment for cancer is a genetically modifying my own cells, my own immune system to fight cancer. So I became a genetically modified organism. Which was very cool. I had to spend a few months in Boston, which was fantastic. It's a really cool place to hang out. And yeah, so I proudly call myself a GMO. So much so that I actually, when I was coming back to New Zealand, I wrote a letter to MPI, the Ministry of Primary Industries, and I applied for a license to re-import myself into the country. Because as a genetically modified organism, you need a license.
What was your response?
Their response was, David, don't be a dick. They said, of course you can come back in, as long as you promise not to recreate. And I went, I can say with surgical certainty, I will never recreate again. That was probably too much information.
Maybe a little bit, but that's okay.
Okay, cool.
We need more honesty in New Zealand.
We do.
Yes.
It's getting late in the day. We're getting a little silly.
And we need to talk about the hard thing about hard things too.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, exactly.
Yep.
So basically now I'm a GMO. I spend quite a bit of time talking to other people about cancer, about going through that, linking it back to the innovation piece. The amazing thing about that innovation, which is an incredible breakthrough in medical research, is it's also happening here in New Zealand. And there's a cancer research in Wellington called the Milligan Institute, who's working in advanced immune therapy. So we often think of technology as being kind of IT stuff, but there's the medical technology and what's going on, the revolutions that are happening in medicine are quite profound at the moment. And there's New Zealand organisations right at the forefront of that, like the Milligan Institute. So,
and
very
for
cool.
more examples of that, you should tune in to Techweek TV this entire week. There you go.
There you go. Nice.
Okay, so the other cool part of the story that I absolutely love, and I think we're both connected on this and being like connectors and really care about community, and it's kind of at the heart of what we do. We're almost like human encyclopedias for New Zealand. And so the way that you found you found this entire thing by you were writing your column and then someone reached out to you.
Yeah.
And let's just talk about like New Zealand connectivity and the value and the asset that is for our nation.
Yeah, that's a really cool topic actually, Sian. You're right, because we don't. It's hard to know when you're living inside, New Zealand, just how special we are. We have it. What an advantage it is to be from a country like ours. And you sort of get glimpses of it. New Zealanders love reading other people's newspapers, stories about us, for example, because everyone's a little bit vain, and that's good. The reality is, though, we are extremely favourably seen by the rest of the world on many facets, not 100%, but in many facets. And they love us as people. They typically think of us as warm and open and welcoming. They think of us as kind of interesting and quirky and funny. They don't always, just to be honest, they don't always think of us as technologically advanced. And that's something that we have to keep working on, is to make sure that they don't see us as sort of friendly hobbits.
World class in some areas, like sport, which does transcend.
That's true. And, it's actually, it was living, because I lived in Boston last year for, 5 or 6 months, so quite a bit of time. And it was interesting because I sort of got lots of feedback. This is East Coast US. They're pretty sophisticated and intelligent people. They're amazing.
Very well educated,
yeah, exactly. And the sort of things they knew about New Zealand, they knew the haka, they knew Flight of the Conchords, they knew the Lord of the Rings movies, they knew at the time the Prime Minister was pregnant, and what else was it? And there was, and I thought to myself, actually, that's a pretty good list. I'm pretty happy with that list. So anyway, for me, it was. So that smallness of the country was another thing that they know. So they sort of think, oh, you must know so-and-so, and you go, oh, we're a big country. And then you go, hang on,
actually,
I do know
that
so-and-so.
person, yeah.
It's like, actually, it's quite strange. So so for me, my story was how I got on the clinical trial was there was a guy from the US who came to New Zealand on holiday. And on holiday, 20 years ago, and he just loved the country, and he still reads New Zealand newspapers and reads them online now. And basically got in touch with me through that because he just likes our perspective on the world. He thought it was a better perspective than they have. Yep. So it's pretty special. We're lucky to have that perception. Yeah, we do a lot at NZT. We do a lot of work trying to understand what other countries' perspectives are of New Zealand. What are the positives and negatives? It's like any sort of advertising or marketing. You're trying to dial up the things that are good and mitigate some of the weaknesses. And probably in the tech space, just to go back to that, the weakest point we've got is that they don't see us as technologically advanced. It's changing with things like, if you say to them, well, actually, this is the country that sort of pioneered some of the most advanced special effects in the film industry. Yep. First country to split the atom. A whole lot of, you can start to reel off a whole lot of facts that collectively actually come together and make a good story.
Yep, it's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so a few more questions going on here, and we're running it up against time. So
nice.
Let's see how you do.
Okay.
What's the main opportunities you see for New Zealand businesses internationally at the moment? And is there anything we can do to move faster?
Yeah, interesting. That's sort of my job, my day job at the moment. I do special projects for government, which sounds like I'm a spy, but I'm not. I just a hitman. But no, in my special project that I'm doing at the moment, actually I'm leading a cross-government group looking at the Agritech sector. And I've always had this belief that New Zealand's, the intersection of New Zealand's primary industries and technology is got to be somewhere in our future. And like the Allbirds example I was talking about earlier, it's a classic one. And so I'm really excited because they asked me to lead this project across about 6 or 7 government agencies to try and understand, to work with the agri-tech sector, the industry group, and companies, how we could collectively really dial up New Zealand's involvement in agri-tech, because it sort of makes intuitive sense that technology to do with the land and horticulture and agriculture and everything should be something we're really, really good at. But actually, globally, we're probably falling behind. And the reason we're falling behind is because there's a lack of kind of focus on it from lots of parts of government and industry. So I'm basically putting together a bit of a plan to say, how do we really dial up diving in there? So for me, going back to your question, that would be an area I'd think where New Zealand's got such a comparative advantage that we should really be doubling down on how do we lead the world when it comes to creating technology that can feed 10 billion people and has a sustainable, long-term, low water usage, all those sorts of things. What's our story there?
Yep. There's a lot of stuff that hasn't really been told. It's almost like Tel Aviv and Israel is actually more known for their agriculture innovation than we are, even though they're like a desert.
Yeah.
So they don't really have that much stuff, but they're really innovating in those fields. But maybe they're just telling their story better.
It's crazy. Yeah, telling the story better. They've got more investment potentially going in. I was watching a documentary the other day about the Netherlands, which is a tiny, tiny country. It's the size of the Waikato. So basically, from about Taupo to just south of Auckland, imagine that's a whole country. It's the Netherlands. They are the world's second biggest producers of food. And the reason they are is because of technology. They have massive greenhouses. They've invested in all sorts of advanced sort of genetics around plants, etc. Now, there's no reason why New Zealand couldn't be right up there with them. And in fact, in some places we are, in some bits of technology, but we haven't treated it the same way. We haven't thought, how can we apply technology to the natural advantage we have of the land?
This is a rude question, but I'm going to ask it anyways because I
Cool.
want your perspective. Do you think we're a bit average sometimes or mediocre? Do you think we need to kind of like step it up or care more, or like what's the answer?
Yeah, I would frame that a little bit differently. I was having this very debate with someone today. I think we're a little complacent. I don't know that we're average or mediocre, but we are complacent at times. And you know, Agritech's a classic example. I was sort of writing a little strategy document and trying to say, what are the factors that's led us to be basically falling behind the rest of the world? One of the factors is I think that New Zealanders think we're already good at this stuff, and so you just sort of get complacent about it. Little do you know that the Tel Avivs of the world and the Israel are investing massive amounts of money in human resource, etc., into something like this, and you kind of wake up and realise that everyone's better than you. It's going back to your sporting analogy, like the All Blacks. It's kind of like sometimes you get the old All Blacks team who just are kind of coasting along. I'm not saying the current lot are, and then all of a sudden, you know, in Europe they've been playing really well, and then suddenly we get beaten, and we get a big surprise.
Yep.
Well, this is like that on a much more dramatic scale.
Yep. We've got about 2 minutes, so
Okay, I'll shut up then.
no, you're good.
No,
I'm just
going
going to keep
going
rolling.
on and on.
What do you see as being up and coming as an area of growth in New Zealand business in the next 10 years outside of the obvious ones like our visual effects and Agritech?
I think New Zealand's has to. I mean, there's an imperative for us to be focusing on climate change and the technology around the green tech. Again, a bit like Agritech, it's just something that's sitting right in front of us as a really obvious thing where New Zealand should have a thought leadership position, and actually we haven't. And you know, and there's a lot of reasons why, but you know, for 10 or 15 years we just haven't had the settings right. But actually, we've got to be focused on stuff like this because we genuinely can lead the world in thinking around that sort of area, and we've got to grasp that opportunity now.
What was it like for you becoming a thought leader, and how did you, I mean, you don't seem like a shy person anyways, but for someone who does have great thoughts and maybe is shy, like how can you encourage them to put their thoughts out there and maybe become a thought leader for New Zealand?
Yeah. You don't have to be someone who talks loudly or, you know, is always yelling at the front of the room to be a thought leader. Some of the best people I know are quiet, introverted, you know, and get their thoughts and ideas across through different mechanisms, through writing or through influencing other people one-on-one. I'm thinking of a person in particular, you know, a couple of founders who I know who have set up incredible businesses and yet are very shy people. So it's about the quality of their character and their idea and their purpose more than their showiness. You know, we get there's a lot of showy entrepreneurial, you know, salespeople in the world. The world doesn't need more of them. It needs people with purpose and with, you know, real character that can take that purpose through to completion.
And we've got 1 more minute.
One more.
So,
Okay. Oh gosh.
what are the most common mistakes you see being made by Kiwi companies as they start to go global beyond the being too humble and not telling their story correctly?
I've got it. Well, actually, I do a whole talk on this, so I can tell you there's 10 that we normally see. One is hiring idiots, but you don't know they're idiots until after you've hired them, and then it's a bit late. So what that really means is you need to do your due diligence about hiring people.
We don't do that very well.
We don't do that very well. We tend to fall in love with people and hire them rather than do the diligence. The second one would be falling in love with your product instead of falling in love with the problem. You know, it's a classic, it's almost a cliche in the world, but you've actually got to really think about what's the problem you're trying to solve and not your product, and don't defend it. And the third one, if I had to pick just 3 out of my 10, would be treating every market as if it's New Zealand, because New Zealand's a very, very simple market compared to international locations. We don't have the depth of competition. We don't have, you know, very complicated supply chains,
political
distribution,
systems.
the political systems. You know, we're the easiest place in the world to do business, and so if you take that mentality to somewhere that's not easy, then you're going to fail, because Brazil is not New Zealand, for example. So those would be 3 common mistakes, but you know, there are many, unfortunately. That's why companies should work with New Zealand Trade and Enterprise and Callaghan Innovation.
And Kiwi Landing Pad.
And Kiwi Landing Pad. I was bringing it all together because taking advice, that's the last one, sorry, taking advice. Kiwis are terrible at taking advice. One of the beautiful things about our nature is we think we can do anything, and we often can. And again, it's also a negative because it means you don't take advice very well. So my final thought would be definitely, I would tell to companies, take advice. Get a board of directors, talk to the Kiwi landing pad, talk to other people, but don't think you can do it all by yourself.
And ask for help, which has a double meaning because it's asking for help in business, but also asking for help personally, which you actually need good positive mental health to build your companies and your life. Last thing, which is favourite technology at the moment that you're excited about, like as a concept?
Oh my word, favourite technology at the moment. I'm looking forward to 5G because I can see it's going to open up a whole lot of different use cases that we can't even imagine yet. So that would probably be the thing that's coming down. And Netflix.
Okay. Thank you so much, David, and thank you all for tuning in to Techweek TV. That's us for the day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.